Good evening and welcome to the January 17th, 2024 meeting of the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners. I apologize for the late start this evening. We've been here since 6. We generally have done a very good job of starting on time, and every once in a while we just have a lot of things that we need to discuss before the meeting, and this happens. And so if you have been here and waiting, I'm very sorry. We have 2 meetings this evening. We have a police committee meeting and a Board of Commissioners meeting. Before we start, please silence your cell phones. Amplifying equipment is available for those having difficulty hearing during the meeting, and the room is also equipped with telecoil technology. And also, when the floor is open for public comment, comment will first be taken from those present in the room and then from those attending virtually. And then we ask that you, if you're in the room, you speak from this podium over here and you introduce yourself and where broadly in the township you live before beginning your comments. But we start with the police committee this evening, and I recognize its chair, Vice President.
Action for a police officer and the consideration of a recommendation to authorize the conducting of competitive exams to establish eligibility for the position of probationary police officer. And with that, I'll turn things over to our police superintendent, Mike McGrath.
Thank you. So the first item you mentioned is a personnel matter. This was discussed with the board in executive session. As a result of investigation, it showed there was violations of policies, procedures, and standards of conduct. Recommendation is for the termination of an officer from employment.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any commissioner comments or questions? Any public comment? All right, and I would like to make a motion.
I have one individual
Yes.
who has raised their hand.
Thank you.
Adrian Seltzer.
Okay.
I'm going to put her through now.
Hi.
I would like to, I don't need to know the officer, but I think it would be beneficial in situations like this if the public knew what the officer is accused of doing. We have the, it would be nice to know, because if there is a pattern throughout the police department, it would be something that I think the public should know. And that's my only comment. We don't need to know which officer, because that is a privacy thing. But what they did would be, I think, would be pertinent. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Seltzer. Manager McNeely to speak to regarding personnel matters.
Certainly, it's not the policy of the board or the requirement to discuss a personnel matter. I don't know if the superintendent give a little more detail with respect to the type of violation might be helpful if the board would like.
If the board would like additional, as you just said, the personnel matters aren't discussed in detail. Any employee has a right to due process, even beyond any action taken this evening. But this has to, the situation addresses integrity. I know there's been past concerns about use of force issues. That is not something that is involved in this situation.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any other commissioner comments or questions? Okay. And with that, I will move to consider for recommendation to the Board of Commissioners approval of a termination of a police officer as recommended by the Superintendent of Police. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Gavin. All in favor? All opposed? Madam Secretary, the motion passes 7-5, I believe. Did I count that right?
I think 8 to 4. 4.
7 to 4?
8 to 4.
8 to 4.
Yeah.
8 to 4. Thank you.
Don't put her in finance.
We have high standards.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to our second agenda item, which is the authorization to conduct competitive exams for the position of probationary police officer. And with that, I'll turn back to Superintendent McGrath.
Thank you. We have a current civil service eligibility list which has 21 applicants on it. They are currently undergoing background investigations over the next several months. Hiring from that list will begin with the July 2024 Police Academy class. This current list will likely not go past the summer hiring cycle. So we are requesting a new recruitment campaign and entry-level tests this spring so we can maintain a timely replacement schedule for vacant positions in the police department going into next year. If approved, the written examination will take place on May 4th, 2024, and the new eligibility list will begin with the January 2025 Police Academy class.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any commissioner comments or questions? I'd just like to say that I appreciate the department's continued efforts to staff up, and I know it's been a challenge, and I know that this next round will be necessary. Any public comment? Okay. Any online comment?
Nope.
All right. And with that, I would move that we consider for recommendation to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the Civil Service Commission to conduct competitive examinations to establish an eligibility list for the position of probationary police officer. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Zelak. All in favor? Any opposed? Madam Secretary, the vote carries unanimously.
Thank you.
And with that, we conclude the business of the Police Committee.
Vice President Kramer and Superintendent, before you leave, can I do an out of order request, because it still remains the #1 email that I get, and that's about the burglaries. Can we put you on the spot just to give us an update?
Certainly. Fortunately, we report that burglaries have slowed down a great deal. There's been significant investigative progress in a number of the investigations, specifically in the township. They've led to both arrests in Lower Merion, in Montgomery County, specifically Abington Township. That's from sharing information about suspects, vehicles seen in areas that they're traveling to. Just to give an idea for the public, the arrest made in Lower Merion in the 24 or 48 hours prior to the arrest in Lower Merion, the vehicle utilized in that burglary was in Michigan, New Jersey, and then in Pennsylvania. It had originated in California. So this South American burglary crews that are hitting the entire country are traveling great distances. Information from another investigation in Lower Merion led to stop and arrest made up in Connecticut. So it's vitally important for all police departments around the nation to be sharing information about these burglary crews. We're making dents in it. There have been charges against a number of different individuals. The network and the sources that are providing support for these crews are starting to be revealed. So it's improving, but our burglaries last year were up significantly from the prior year. Not as high as they've been pre-2018, but obviously something of a concern, and something we ask that the public be aware of if they see any suspicious activity in their neighborhoods.
Thank you very much, and I apologize for the impromptu request.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice President Kramer. Will the January 17th, 2024 meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Township of Lower Merion please come to order, and all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Wells is asked to be excused, and Mr. Stevenson may join us virtually later. Mr. Bernhoff.
Present.
Mr. Churchill.
Here.
Mr. Courtney.
Here.
Ms. Epstein. Here. Mr. Gabbard.
Present.
Mr. Grimes.
Here.
Ms. S. Kramer.
Here.
Ms. G. Kramer. Here. Mr. Rossman.
Here.
Mr. Woodring.
Here.
Mr. Zellop.
Here.
Mr. Sino.
Here.
Mr. President, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I'll start with a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting of the Board of Commissioners held on November 29th, 2023, and a stated meeting of the Board of Commissioners held on December 13th, 2023, as distributed. Do I have a second? Thank you, Vice President Kramer. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstentions? Madam Secretary, it passes unanimously. A few announcements. The board met in executive session earlier this evening, as you're all aware, regarding the following matters: police disciplinary action, billboard litigation, and a zoning hearing board appeal in litigation. Monday, February 19th, 2024, President's Day, is a legal holiday. The Township Administration Building and Township Libraries will be closed for business, but there will be refuse and recycling collections. So this is the portion of this evening where members of the public may address the board on any non-agenda items or any other public matters in which the township has jurisdiction or authority. So the way we do this is this. We ask if you're in the room that you come speak from this podium, state your name and generally in the township where you live prior to addressing the board. And we ask that we keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. If there is a group of people in attendance speaking on the same topic, we ask that you have one person speak on behalf of all of you, and then you'll get 5 minutes. Comments, we'll start with people in the room, then we'll turn to people who are on Zoom. And generally the practice of this board is that if you have questions or comments, we respond to them after everyone has made their comments or questions. Then it will turn back to the board and staff for a response. So now I'd like to invite anyone who wishes to take advantage of public privilege to come forward. Anyone? Don't be shy.
My name is Richard Payne. I own the property at 17 East Lancaster here in Ardmore. I also have the business in the same place for 42 years. There is a problem with safety and pedestrian safety, and as well parking. And it's not the parking issue that you think I'm going to say. There's plenty of parking, but there's no communication to the parking and from the parking. The signs are terrible. If you go down Cricket to where the garage is, the sign is this big for the parking. It has no signage. And across the street from me in Shuffle Plaza, which you're planning to do a pocket park, it is overloaded with employees who are parking there all day long. They're 2-hour meters. You have in your ordinance, you're allowed to be there 2 hours. Please enforce it. And you could have signage with solar power flashing for the garage to get people to the garage easily. You also need signage once you're in the garage, how to get back to Lancaster Avenue. I have customers, clients that come in, and if they go off 1 block off of Lancaster, they're lost. And if you come from Montgomery Avenue through Suburban Square, the signage that says that you have to make a right turn at the top of that hill is non-existent. So people go that way and realize that they're caught in a loop. And they put up a sign right under the bridge, right after the bridge, that's this big, that says, turn left onto Lancaster Avenue for East Lancaster Avenue. It's ridiculous. There are, in many places, they have signs, digital signs that say X amount of parking spaces available in a parking garage. If you had that at the end of Shuffle Plaza, you could get steered to the parking that is a block away. You've added numerous apartments in town, which is more cars, more vehicles, and that's where the safety is in question. I was here quite a few years ago to get permit parking into the parking garage, and it's now being used by the apartment owners because it's much cheaper for them to park with the permit parking than it is to park in their garage that the Ardmore One offers. It's $100 a month for them to park below. They can park next door for $200 for 6 months. So I would appreciate that before you make the beautification of the Shuffle Plaza, you correct the problems that we already have instead of creating new. And that's what I'm here.
Okay.
Oh, one last thing. the parking that is the Berniker lot, some of that should be for public parking. There's no difference between township employees and employees like me and my other employees. That should be a public lot, at least part of it. Definitely the police should have their lot, and the people that are doing administrative work should have parking. But the other employees should be parking remotely.
Thank you, sir. So the beeping was the 3 minutes. But
Sorry.
thank you for the comments. Anyone else wish to take advantage of public privilege?
Good evening. Kay Sickles. I live in Bala-Cynwyd. And as of last Tuesday, I'm the new president of the Neighborhood Club of Bala-Cynwyd. I just came to say hello and to congratulate our new commissioners. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's off to a good start.
Anyone else? Feel free.
I was gonna say,
Hi, everyone. I'm Hope Danoff.
I'm David Danoff.
I'm here to talk about the personal use of fireworks in our neighborhood, and I live in Bryn, Mawr. I wanted to talk about what happened on New Year's Eve, and it's happened many times in the past. First of all, New Year's Eve, we had this huge explosion that lasted for about a half hour. I didn't know what it was. I didn't even know if it was a terrorist attack or what have you. I went outside and was like, wow, what is happening here? I've lived in the area for 40 years. And I was like, something is going on. And it wasn't the first time. I want to tell you that I called my police and I said, what is going on in the area? He said, oh, that's like the fireworks. It's like the same family that does it over and over again. And I was like, we're getting tons of 911 calls. I said, well, you know, I didn't call 911, but it's incredible disturbance. It's really incredible disturbance because I didn't know what it was. It lasted for a good half hour. I couldn't have a great evening with my husband or my friends. We couldn't watch TV, hear music, or any of that things. It was a real noise disturbance. Nonetheless, with people that have pets, you know, people that have young children, the elderly, and I have a son that's disabled as well. I reached out to, I didn't know what to do because when I reached out to the fire marshal, he said, he was very lovely, and he said, well, they changed it, Hope. 5 years ago, it wasn't allowed here. But after 5 years, they allowed it to increase the revenue through the state. So it's a state issue. So I said, oh, okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in touch with my state representatives. So I had a wonderful conversation with Bettina Pearl. She's really wonderful at State Senator Capoletti's office. And I also got in touch with Tim Briggs' office as well. But Bettina Pearl was just wonderful, and she said, Hope, guess what? There is a bill pending in the House Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, and it's a bipartisan thing that's a bill that's pending there, and it actually was put there, I think she said the May of this year, 2023. So I didn't know what really to do. Here it is. Here's a copy of the bill. And she said it was introduced May 2023. So they're just really looking to pass it, and it have a lot of bipartisan support. And she also sent me the members that are on that committee. And I love that it's bipartisan. So the bottom line is that I wanted to be reversed to have it where residents in Lower Merion and also throughout the state are not allowed to purchase fireworks for personal use. I'm a reasonable person, and I understand that there are schools and big, you know, amounts of land that you could have to have the fireworks, but not somebody that has like 2 to 3 acres in like, you know, a certain street, and that it disturbs the whole neighborhood. You know, that is something that I don't think should be allowed, and I'm going to see how I can change it. So I wanted to just say that I'm asking for a resolution to be able to help me to change that law. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room wish to take advantage of public privilege? Okay, seeing none. Jody, do we have anyone online?
I do. I have Adrienne Seltzer online. I'm going to promote her to a panelist.
Okay, if anyone else online wants to take advantage of public privilege, please raise your virtual hand so the Township Secretary knows to promote you.
All bundled up, Arquito isn't working properly. Adrian Seltzer, Winwood. I again would like to ask, before the township is sued, that the township immediately add closed captioning to the meeting recordings per the Americans with Disabilities Act. Also, I do a newsletter that I send out that gives all the, when all the meetings are and the agendas and stuff. So in this week's, I wanted to put something in about the noise ordinance. And because it was not on the agenda, I couldn't find it. I spent about a half hour looking for it online. Things like this should be easier to find. The noise ordinance should also be something that the last speaker should be looking into. I eventually did get a copy from my civic association, but it shouldn't be that difficult to find something on the website. So that's my two things. Please, I've been talking about the closed captioning for a while now, and I'm hearing rumors about the township being sued, and I'd rather they spend the money on the closed captioning than on lawyers and stuff like that. Please. Thank you.
Seltzer.
And I'll promote him now.
Okay.
I'm Ethan from Marion Station. It is good to meet you, everyone. 1 second.
Sorry, Mr. Frank, can you please just speak louder or closer to your microphone? We're having a little trouble hearing you in here.
How's this?
Better.
Excellent. I'd like to talk about the Montgomery road diet that I'd like to thank Commissioner Courtney for bringing up. That would be a classic 4-lane to 3-lane diet with the addition of bike lanes. To reiterate the statistics from the Philadelphia road diets, they saw an 18% reduction in crashes and a 25% reduction in speeding, which are some excellent numbers. And importantly, no change in vehicle traffic volume. So the businesses and people that use Montgomery would remain unaffected. According to PennDOT's Traffic Information Repository website, Montgomery's average annual daily traffic volume is around 13,500 cars. And I spoke to a PennDOT signal engineer who told me that PennDOT's current threshold is anything less than 17,000 is a good candidate for a road diet. Montgomery also has widely spaced intersections, which is also important. And it's a good target because it connects important points like the Ardmore Shopping Center to Lower Marion High School and, for example, Ballackinwood Library. According to Google Maps, Montgomery is 42 feet wide, so it is the perfect fit for 3 10-foot travel lanes. That's 2 travel lanes and a turning lane, plus a 12-foot bidirectional cycling path with flex post separators. That would be a quick build type project, meaning you're only repainting the markings on the road and don't need to do any repavement. So those are relatively inexpensive. The Federal Highway Administration says around $100,000 per mile. So the total cost, of course, depends on how much of Montgomery is road dieted. It's a long road after all. And PennDOT would have more information on that, of course, since they recently did the West Winwood Road diet. Now, once the diet is complete, of course, you won't expect like hundreds of people to suddenly flock to that road on bikes, because a single lane by itself doesn't do much good, but a network doesn't come into existence all at once. You got to start somewhere. And so it's now 2024. In the October meeting, it was mentioned this was a thing for 2024. Of course, there's much more of 2024 to go. But I'd say the earlier planning starts, the better, since it tends to take a while. But PennDOT's doing more and more of these around the state and in Philly and right here with West Wynwood. So they certainly see the benefits. And thank you for listening.
Great, thank you, Mr. Bryn. Jody, is there anyone else online?
There is not.
Okay. Does anyone wish to respond to any of the comments or questions from public privilege? Commissioner Courtney.
Thank you, President Sinai. I got two of my favorite topics in public privilege of the floor tonight. I'll go in reverse order. Mr. Frank, thank you for your comments about the Montgomery Avenue Road diet. I don't really have anything to add other than gratitude for keeping that issue at the fore of our minds. It is overdue for investigation. That plus the potential of putting red light cameras up at some of those intersections to prevent some of the accidents and offenses that we see with people trying to turn left when they shouldn't, or speeding. The other one is the discussion about parking in Ardmore and Schaffel Plaza, hopefully one day to become Ardmore Green. I think we've all talked about the lack of signage and direction to the parking garage. I think when people complain about parking in Ardmore, what they're complaining about is they don't know where the parking is in Ardmore, and so everybody uses this very visible lot, and that lot can be repurposed into something beautiful that can be a great asset to the community, and we won't have problems with parking as long as we can tell people how to get there. And so I think the speaker, sorry, I forgot his name. The speaker is correct that attached to the redesign of Schaffel Plaza should also be the redesign or repurpose of the signage around the One Ardmore parking garage and other areas of parking in Ardmore. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Courtney. Commissioner Zoloff.
Thanks, President Sinai. I want to thank Ms. Danoff for bringing up the fireworks issue. It was just a week ago that we spent a lot of time here talking about noise and amending our noise ordinance, and we had a detailed proposal and a lot of public comment. And so if there is, it sounds like there is legislation in Pennsylvania pending to change what townships can do in terms of allowing or not allowing fireworks. And so I guess I would ask the staff if Ernie, if staff can take a look at that, so for us to become more knowledgeable. And it's rare, but from time to time we do consider resolutions on state legislation, and this may be something that makes sense for us to consider. On a different topic that was brought up about that Commissioner Courtney just referred to, I think it is time for us to take another look at red light cameras and allowing them at certain intersections in this township. We did so 10 or so years ago. I'm looking at our superintendent, and he's agreeing with that rough time frame. We debated it, and we decided not to have them here in Lower Merion Township. It may make sense for us to take another look at that. So, thank you, President Sinai.
Thank you, Commissioner Zoloff. Commissioner Grimes.
That's who I am. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Just briefly to add on to what Commissioner Zoloff said about fireworks. Thank you for your comments. As he said, I'm glad the state's looking at it. I received some feedback from some of my constituents about the fireworks, which were on Barbary Road. The good news is that they were at 8 p.m. or scheduled for 8 p.m. And the other good news is that they're subject to our noise ordinance, as Commissioner Zoloff said. The one thing I did want to note is that the township sent out notice to people who live within a 1 mile radius of those fireworks, of the address where they were taking place. And that doesn't stop the fireworks that object to them, but if you have pets that have an issue, people did have notice. But in order to get those notices, you need to sign up for the township's Blackboard notification system. So to the extent anyone here or anyone watching virtually is interested in getting notifications of fireworks, please sign up for our Blackboard system. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Commissioner Grimes. Anyone else? Commissioner Kramer.
I just want to thank Kay Sickles for coming down to meet us and introduce herself tonight, and to let her know that Commissioners Rossman, Woodring, and I look forward to working closely with you and the neighborhood club.
Here, here.
Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. Vice President Kramer.
Thank you. I'd like to respond to Ms. Seltzer. Thank you for the question and for your advocacy regarding closed captioning. I have good news. I'm going to turn things over to Lori Jennings, our Public Information Officer, who can tell you more about our closed captioning options.
Thank you, Vice President Kramer. I would like to let the public know that on our Zoom feed, the closed captioning is there and you can enable it. So if someone is hearing impaired, they can do that. And also on our live Facebook feed, you can have closed captioning on that during the live meeting. And then to have the playback on our YouTube channel, you can watch that and it has a closed captioning enable also. So that folks that need that can certainly do that.
Thank you, Ms. Jennings.
Thank you, Vice President Kramer. Anyone else wish to respond to public privilege? Okay, seeing none, we now turn to public comment. This is the section of our meeting where members of the public may address the board on any agenda items. Same ground rules apply. If you have comments on the ordinance to amend Chapter A180, that should be held for that portion of the meeting when we are doing the public hearing for that. But for anything else that's on our agenda, if you wish to take advantage of public comment, please come forward to the podium. Okay. Jody, do you have anyone online?
Do not see anyone with their virtual hand raised.
Okay. Well, then we will move along. So the next item is the consent calendar. Does anyone wish to remove anything from consent? Okay. I'm going to move that we approve the consent calendar as presented, and including I guess the second item from the police committee meeting held earlier this evening when we that was the additional police officers. That was the second item. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
For the adoption of the consent calendar, Mr. Burnham.
Aye.
Mr. Churchill.
Yes.
Mr. Courtney.
Yes.
Ms. Epstein.
Yes.
Mr. Gabbard.
Aye.
Mr. Grimes.
Yes.
Ms. S. Kramer.
Yes.
Ms. G. Kramer.
Yes.
Mr. Rossman.
Yes.
Mr. Woodring.
Yes.
Mr. Zelloff.
Aye.
Mr. Sinat.
Yes.
The consent calendar is duly adopted.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We will now turn to page 21 of your packet. And that is the ARP Vitality Grant Monitoring Contract Award. And so I'm going to put this in as a motion. So I'm going to move that we approve the execution of a professional services contract in an amount not to exceed $71,360 with UHY Advisors Mid-Atlantic, Inc. for American Rescue Plan nonprofit grant monitoring and administration consulting services. Do I have a second? Thank you, Vice President Kramer. I see that we have Assistant Township Manager Brandon Ford here. I don't know if you want to give the board and the public a brief overview, or if you just want to take questions.
Certainly, I'll do a real brief recap because we are running late. So as the board is aware, because we did talk about it at the Finance Committee meeting, this is a recommendation by staff to award a professional contract to UHY Advisors to monitor and administer the ARP, the American Rescue Plan, nonprofit vitality grant program that the board set up and awarded 21 different projects this past fall, totaling $832,721 in ARP funding to 21 nonprofit organizations for projects that they submitted that were independently scored and reviewed by a third party and then recommended and awarded by this board this past December. Now with 21 awardees comes the responsibility of monitoring those expenses and also ensuring that all the documentation is in place for when the township has to submit our reporting to the U.S. Treasury. That is an obligation that we have as a township to the U.S. federal government, the U.S. Treasuries in particular, as a condition of the American Rescue Plan funds. And these were also conditions that were accepted by the nonprofit applicants as a condition for these nonprofit vitality funds for these projects. So by being awarded these funds, these nonprofit organizations accepted the responsibility of regular reporting to the township. If awarded, what this contract would do is township staff would coordinate with UHY advisors to not only work with the 21 nonprofit organizations, but to also collect documents, monitor and administer quarterly reporting that the township can then use in our quarterly reporting, but also audit those expenses to ensure that the funds that you awarded go to the projects that were purported to be funded. And that would take over the course of a year, a little bit over a year. These nonprofit organizations have until June of 2025 to spend these funds. So this engagement, if awarded with UHY advisors, would be up to June 2025 into an amount not to exceed $71,360. And if I may also add, we entered into a similar contract, a not to exceed amount for an ARP consultant this past fall. They were the ones who scored the applications. It was a different consultant, but it was a very similar format in terms of the billing, in terms of the amount of work that the township has paid, will be paid for if awarded. And I'm happy to say that through that contract, which was initially awarded in an amount not to exceed $26,000, coordinating between staff and those consultants at that time, the township only ended up spending a little bit over $8,400. So less than a third of what the contract cost could have been. And if awarded, we would take the similar approach in working with these advisors. Township staff, the township manager's office in particular, would work with these consultants to not only ensure that these nonprofit funds are being monitored and audited accurately, but that we only do what we need to make sure the job is done. So I know one of the concerns that was raised during the Finance Committee was that there was a lot of bells and whistles in the proposal. We would only engage those consultants with the services that we need to ensure that these projects are on track, that they are monitored accurately, and it is done efficiently. And to that end, we would also include itemized billing so that we would be able to monitor and track how much time is being spent with each applicant. So there are cost controls with that. So although this contract is in an amount not to exceed $71,000, a little bit over, I would anticipate that we would be well under that number if we are on track with the previous contract that I referenced.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Bernheim.
Well, this will be a comment as well as a motion, since this is on the table. And I will not repeat that which I had stated during the Finance Committee, but I will leapfrog off of your last few comments, which I believe emanate from that and the concerns. And you describe how we will be monitoring the monitors in order to see that the price that they put out there of $71,360 not to exceed is something that is hopefully substantially lower, similar to that of prior consultants that you have referenced. In the comments that I made before, it wasn't just mere bells and whistles. It was a little bit of a generic proposal that was given to us, which may be applicable for programs other than the one that we have seek to engage their services. Thus, the $71,360,000 not to exceed price was very, very high. Commissioner Gilda Kramer noted we probably could hire somebody to do this task and then quite a bit more for that sum. Recognizing that we're talking about basically quarterly reports and then our own reporting, and this is as of June 2025, and we're not going to have this money out the door for a while, and that many of these projects will be a one-and-done report, and probably no more than 2 of those 21 applicants may have difficulty with the reports once somebody tells them how to do it. I submit that the price range of $71,360 is probably well over double of that which the time requirements would be necessary. So if or let me back up, in their contract, it states that should they exceed that amount, they would have the ability to come back to us. So since we had indicated before that sometimes water takes the form you pour it in, as opposed to having $71,000 and change be the not to exceed amount, I'm going to propose that we put that at $35,000. And in the event they need to come back to us because this amount is not adequate, they always have the ability to do so, the same way they would for the $71,000. But if we're going to keep controls or a lid on them, no reason not to do it out of the gate. So I make a motion to amend that which is already on the floor, that to lower the not to exceed amount from $71,360 to $35,000.
Is there a second?
Well, that went over well.
Okay.
Now you know how I feel.
Okay. Is that the second, Commissioner Zeloff, or the
It's
second?
not.
Okay. Commissioner Zeloff.
Brandon, thanks for your explanation. Thinking about this over the last week, what we have before us is a requirements contract that establishes hourly rates for services to be provided that management oversees and approves. And we do enter into requirements contracts from time to time for materials mostly, but we did it before with services and the example you gave, and that's what's before us now, and there's a maximum. So the amount is high, and I'm sure that Madam Secretary has noted in her minutes your prediction that we will not be needing that maximum amount, and I'm confident that we won't because you and Ernie will be overseeing the work, not overseeing the overseer, but overseeing the work necessary to close out these contracts to comply with complex federal rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zeloff. Let me just add, just one other point, because I am sympathetic to Commissioner Bernheim's point. And I'll note that we received 3 bids. The bids ranged in price from amount from $70,000 to $81,600. We selected the bid that was $71,360, so it's only $1,360 greater than the lowest bid. And I think that raises or begs the question of why did all 3 bids come in double Commissioner Bernheim's target amount, right? And I think there are a number of reasons for it. I can imagine that if I were bidding on a contract like this, and recognizing that if I came back to the board, they may not say, hey, you can have more money, in recognizing that I don't actually know how much work each thing is going to take, that I might bid the outer envelope of what I would think would be necessary on the expectation that I would deliver something less. And it would be probably a little too much work to actually go through and do the due diligence on all the potential recipients in advance of actually being awarded any contract, right? So I too have great faith in our staff that it's going to come in lower than this number, and I take some reassurance that we did get 3 bids that seem to be in the same ballpark on this thing. Anyone else? Okay. We've seen that. I guess we will call that for a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, abstentions? Okay, I believe that was 10-1.
Yes.
The next item is under the Police Committee. And so this is a vote for what we did in the committee earlier. So I will just put this as a motion, just for expediency, seeing how the vote had gone earlier. That I move we adopt the recommendation of the Police Committee for disciplinary action of a police officer of termination. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Bernheim. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
It was 8-4.
It was 8-4 again? Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing, but not tonight, an adoption of an ordinance. For Chapter A180, the Historic Resource Inventory Cleanup Amendment, is on page 25 of your packet. This is an ordinance to amend the code of the Township of Lower Merion, Chapter A180, to improve consistency with the township's official address listing. But due to a technical glitch, the proposed ordinance was not provided to the Montgomery County Planning Commission 30 days before adoption as required by code. So what we're going to do is we're going to open the public hearing. We're going to take comments tonight. We are going to then continue the public hearing until February 21st. We will have then advertised it appropriately. And then, we will continue the public hearing to that point. Okay? So we'll do everything except that part. So I'm not going to bother to read the lengthy ordinance because we're not going to vote on it tonight. But with that, I'm going to open the public hearing, and we're going to start with Greg Pritchard to give us an explanation.
Thank you very much, President Sinai. As you described it, this is basically a cleanup ordinance of several issues that we discovered in the Historic Resource Inventory, which is the list of properties and addresses in the township that are officially historically designated. We found a number of updates that we split into 10 different categories, which I won't go into all of them, but they include address updates, which are over the past 20 years since the creation of the inventory, people's addresses have changed, and we need to update certain addresses to reflect those changes. There have been new condominium developments that resulted in the creation of new addresses within historic buildings that need to be individually added as well. There have been several demolitions of historic properties. We're seeking to remove those addresses from the inventory. And there were some additions to the inventory that the board had previously approved, but had not been added to the code by ordinance. And we discovered those when cross-referencing board actions with the list of addresses in the code, and we found about 24 of those. Those are just some examples of the largest categories of edits, and I'd be glad to answer any questions. I did give a longer presentation back at the November Building and Planning Committee meeting. I'm sorry to new commissioners who weren't here for that, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Before we turn to the board for questions, we're going to take questions and comments from the public. So if anyone in the room wishes to address the board or staff on this, please come to this podium up here.
Good evening, Mawr in Haverford. I'm actually the immediate past president of the Haverford Civic Association, and I'm coming to you wearing that hat. I'm going to make a couple of comments in my allotted 3 minutes, but I did send a more extensive email earlier, and I do hope that you'll consider some of what I had sent. I wanted to engage this evening and ask for one line item striking change to this proposed ordinance. I would ask for you to remove one address from Section 8, which is the section for historic resources previously approved but not adopted by ordinance, specifically item HA094, and that's listed as 43 Haverford Station Road, which was approved apparently during a process in 2000, I believe, for designation as a Class 1 resource. The codification now of this previous decision effectively would elevate the preservation status of the Haverford train stations, and it's not necessary at this time, and there are really good reasons to delay such consideration. The listing in question is intended, I believe, to describe both sides of the tracks with multiple buildings, the inbound train station on the southwest side of the tracks toward Lancaster Avenue, and the outbound station on the northeast toward Montgomery Avenue. As I've noted previously, separate buildings, structures, objects, and historic sites located on the same property deserve separate consideration, and that's in accordance with both Pennsylvania and federal guidance. I am glad to see that this proposed ordinance this evening does provide for such clarification for the resources located at 331 Penn Road, and that should be our standard. Our Haverford stations, the two of them, are very different buildings. I'm not an architect, but I would not suggest that the inbound station is something worthy of our highest level of preservation protection, Class 1. This is the station where the SEPTA leases space for their ticket office and which previously housed some offices of Berkshire Hathaway. The outbound station is very different. I believe that's considered the original station, known when it was built as a Haverford College train station, and it's a somewhat, what I would call gingerbread, traditional style, similar to other stations along the main line. And it could potentially deserve some preservation protection, which it has. Both of these buildings fall in the Haverford Station Historic District, and thus in the Historic Resource Overlay District of our zoning code. Any exterior changes are already reviewed by the Historical Architectural Review Board, or HARB. There are arguments to be made in favor of doing this now. I addressed some of them in the email that I sent, but I believe it's in the best interest of the township at this time that these stations continue to be treated as they have been, as contributing resources in the Haverford Station Historic Districts, at least for the foreseeable future. I believe the line regarding 43 Haverford Station Road should be removed from the current proposed ordinance while other processes and priorities play out. The Board of Commissioners needs to understand the current situation and do the work, as you've done in the past to balance competing priorities. We've seen a number of cases where historic preservation was prioritized to the detriment of smart growth and economic development. Our Haverford Civic Association has been actively pursuing developers who might be interested in taking on the Haverford Station buildings because we see them as eyesores, and the lack of vibrant retail in those buildings is just saddening to us. Staff was asking around as well, but it was actually our member, Lee Tabus, who began the engagement with Ken Weinstein of Philly Office Retail, and I don't know if you read the Inquirer, but he's been in there a couple of times, very well regarded in the communities, especially Germantown and some others. Lee's efforts actually go back to 2006, but we got engaged as a civic in 2021, and this is how long we've been at this. We want to see this through now without incurring the additional burden of Class 1 designation, and make no mistake, that is a burden. Lower Merion works hard to recognize our history through historic preservation, but attempting to preserve every single example of our history, like every train station, runs counter to other priorities, such as economic development. While our code allows us to designate resources that meet certain standards, our process should not require such designation in the face of other concerns and other opportunities. These specific Haverford stations do not need to be preserved as Class 1 level to meet the commitment of Lower Merion to historic architectural preservation. They need to be developed. I'm asking one of you to make a motion to delete the line in question, HA 094, 43 Haverford Station Road, from this proposed ordinance. Any consideration of elevating one or both of the stations could be reconsidered in the future if we find that necessary, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding Haverford Civic Association's interest and our efforts to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gill, and we did indeed also receive your email. Anyone else with comment on this ordinance?
Charlie Davis, current president of Haverford Civic Association. I'd just like to underscore what Ms. Gillen said, that we'd like to keep.
So, sorry, I'm going to ask you, if you could pick up the microphone out of, it will come out of there. Perfect, perfect, that's great, thank you.
Okay, so I'm Charlie Davis, the current president of the Haverford Civic Association, and I'd just like to underscore what Mo said in keeping the Haverford train stations out of the Class 1 historic designation, because we'd like to make sure that we can smartly and tastefully develop them, redevelop them, and make them, return them to their former vibrance as economic hubs of the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to comment on this ordinance? Okay, Jody, you have anyone online?
No one online has their hand.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments, responses by my fellow commissioners? Commissioner Zoll.
Thanks, President Sinai. Greg, could you respond to the public comment from Ms. Gillen, particularly with her point about the difference in the structure between the inbound and the outbound? Right, the outbound is a older building.
Well, that's
and
correct.
A different design than the inbound.
Absolutely. I would say both stations have their own historic significance and importance to the Haverford District, the Pennsylvania Railroad history, the history of the area. And the Historic Resource Inventory doesn't make a distinction between the two stations. One is clearly older than the other. They both represent different eras of the railroad company. And I'd be glad to speak further on it if you'd like.
I didn't hear that last part.
Never mind.
Are both structures currently in the Haverford Station Historic District as contributing structures?
Yes, they are.
And are they both governed by the HARB today?
Well, that's an important point. I just want to take a minute or two to go over this real quickly. And I want to acknowledge first the work of the Haverford Civic for trying to secure a new tenant for the station and a preservation-minded developer who knows how to work with these kinds of buildings. Ms. Gillen is correct in one aspect. An address that is listed on the HRI as a Class 1 resource and is within a local historic district is the same as an unlisted resource in the district. Either way, HARB must review exterior changes to that property, including alterations to existing buildings, whether there's any new construction, any new signage, things like that. This ordinance would not add any new layers of regulation to this property or any others that are within the district, and it's simply not true that the designation would be an impediment to a redevelopment or a burden on a potential developer. And in fact, it would actually allow a developer to take advantage of historic incentives for uses that are only available to properties that are Class 1 or 2, which is how many successful projects like the Bryn Film Institute and other developments in our area have succeeded.
And then one more question. Have both structures been treated as Class 1 since roughly 2000 when they were initially designated?
Well, this property has only come to HARB once before. It never came to the Historical Commission in that 7 years between the initial vote by the commissioners and the establishment of the Haverford Station Historic District. But the property came forward to the HARB in 2014 for the replacement of signs, and it went through the normal review process that way.
Great, thanks. And I would just echo your comment. The initiative of the Haverford Civic Association to prioritize the development of this station, both sides, which is currently unoccupied, is an initiative that's something a civic should be doing. And it's a priority of the Haverford Civic, and one that any way we can assist as a township is important, because it's one of the iconic train stations in the township and a defining feature of this community.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Commissioner Zoff. Commissioner Grimes.
Thank you. So, just to add a few of my own comments on that. First of all, I want to thank Ms. Gillen for sending your comments earlier. I had a chance to read them, and I appreciate having additional time to look at them, as I think others do too. So the good news here is that I think our end goal is the same, and I think other of my colleagues are the same way. We all want there to be adaptive reuse of that Haverford Station project. And the good news from my perspective, which I may be different from some of the comments you offered, is that I see the historic designation as being an asset in helping to achieve that goal. I understand in the particular circumstances that some proposals that have come up for the station recently have been willing to incorporate the historic nature of the project in it, which helps preserve the character of the district. But further, as Greg mentioned, there are tax credits and other things that go along with being a historic property that could help redevelop this property. I do have a respectful difference of opinion in the outlook that historic preservation or historic designation of properties is a burden on those properties. I think every community in this township, the realtors market it historic Bryn Mawr, historic Gladwin, historic Penn Wynn. And they're not historic if all the historic properties go away. I think our residents appreciate it. I think visitors to the township appreciate it. So I think while there can be respectful debate as to whether the merits of Class 1, Class 2, and HARB districts, I think that there is merit to designating valuable properties. And I would also add, in this case, as Greg may have mentioned, but certainly in discussion it's come up, this property was designated 44 years ago. by a previous board, and I'm counting 7 presidents ago, I think. Ken Davis looks younger every time I look at him. But in any event, he was president when this was designated. That's the inside joke. But I believe this board would have to undesignate the property if we were to treat it differently, which is not part of this proposal, so, or these cleanup amendments. So just wanted to throw that out. But in any event, I thank you for the input that you regularly provide, because whereas I may not always agree, I find it very helpful in sorting some of these things out. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. Commissioner Courtney.
Thank you, President. Can I just get a clarification on one thing there? Is it, I know it was approved to be a Class 1 resource, but if it's not in the ordinance, is it a Class 1 resource?
That's up for debate. It was approved back in December of 2000, along with 21 other properties. The commissioners took a vote. There was a full public process up until that last step. That was supposed to be the creation of an ordinance and adoption of an ordinance to add those 22 properties to the list of historic properties in the code.
But from a legal perspective right now, it's not a Class 1 resource. It's a contributing resource to the Haverford Station Historic District. Is that correct?
I think that's safe to say, yes.
Okay. I find Ms. Gillen's argument compelling because it matches some of my own feelings about how Class 1 designation can make it difficult to develop, can make it difficult to update a property or maintain a property at times. I have been an infrequent attendee of the Haverford Civic as of late due to conflicts, but I did attend when they took on this issue a few years ago, and they've done tremendous work, more than any other group, including ourselves, has done to improve that station. If they feel that it's going to be an impediment to their work to make this a Class 1 resource, then I think we should remove it. And is the motion already on the floor for me to amend?
No, because we're continuing it till next month, but you'll get to do it then.
Well, Ms. Gillen, remind me to do that.
You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, okay.
That's it, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Courtney. Commissioner Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to first thank the members of the Haverford Civic who have brought this forward, who have worked tirelessly to work on the Haverford train station piece. Also would like to thank Greg for meeting with me and Commissioner Zoloff about this designation. I understand that the Haverford Civic and members of that community have some legitimate concerns around the whole issue regarding this designation and the impact it has. It has had on folks who have tried to make changes in their homes, and the impact that it's had in a negative thread. I also have an understanding about what the purpose of that we want to do to maintain this for the historical aspects of our train station. So my hope is that we can find a happy medium somewhere where we can make sure that we have things in place to preserve the historical aspects of the this train station, but at the same time do not make it so burdensome that folks who are trying to work tirelessly with the Civic and individuals and developers, that it would turn them away from wanting to partner with us. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, seeing none. I'm going to move that we continue the public hearing until February 21st, 2024. Have a second. Thank you, Vice President Kramer. Okay, any comments on the motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we'll revisit this in a month.
Unanimous?
That was unanimous. Thank you for clarifying, Commissioner Churchill. I'm not running late enough. You have to like get that in there. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is an adoption of ordinance, Chapter 145, Vehicles and Traffic, Bryn Mawr Avenue Parking Restrictions at Derwin Road and Montgomery Avenue. You can find that on page 31 of your packet. I'll move that we amend the Code of the Township of Lower Merion, Chapter 145, thereof entitled Vehicles and Traffic, Articles 15, Schedules, Section 145, 115, Schedule 15, parking prohibited at all times by prohibiting parking on Bryn Mawr Avenue as follows. On the west side for 65 feet north and 64 feet south of Derwin Road. On the east side for 55 feet south of Derwin Road. On the west side, 66 feet north of Montgomery Avenue. And on the east side, 72 feet north of Montgomery Avenue. This ordinance was authorized for advertisement to the stated meeting of the Board of Commissioners held December 13th, 2023, and duly advertised in December 31st, 2023, and January 7th, 2024 editions of the Mainline Times and Suburban. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Gilda Kramer. Any questions for staff on this or board comments? Okay, seeing none. Madam Secretary, I believe this calls for a roll call vote.
It does. For the adoption of ordinance 4286, Mr. Bernheim.
Aye.
Mr. Churchill.
Yes.
Mr. Corky.
Yes.
Ms. Epstein. Yes. Mr. Gavin.
Aye.
Mr. Grimes.
Yes.
Ms. S. Kramer.
Yes.
Ms. G. Kramer.
Yes.
Mr. Rossman.
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson.
Aye.
Mr. Woodring.
Yes.
Mr. Zello.
Aye.
Mr. Sinai.
Yes.
The ordinance is duly adopted.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We are now on to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business to come before the board? Okay, seeing none, I believe Commissioner Kramer has new business.
I have an announcement.
Okay. Let's hear it.
The township has shade trees available for residents to be planted in the township's rights of way. Residents can request a shade tree on the township's website, lowermerion.org, and the township first will evaluate the proposed location, help increase our tree canopy, and request a tree today.
Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. That was wonderful. Can I add to that? That studies have shown that street trees slow traffic. They don't just provide shade. So if you want to slow traffic on your street, plant some trees. Okay, with that, any other new business? Seeing none, this meeting is hereby adjourned. Everyone please.